Okay, welcome back to Tales of TIC. Today we have a very special guest, Mark Hard from Bureau Veritas, who's an industry executive. We've got a load of questions to go through today. First off, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
We'll jump straight in then. So the first question, please can you go back in time and are you able to give us an understanding of your life and how you got here today?
Sure. So, born as a farm kid in northern Saskatchewan, in the middle of Canada. Kind of grew up there, very focused on science and math through school, and did well in those subjects. Maybe a little less so on the English and the social sciences, but pretty good on the sciences. Um, Went into university, got a degree, bachelor's degree in biology with chemistry and math minors, thinking that I was going to go into medicine actually.
Right.
Came out of school and realized that, hey, I needed to make some money to pay back these bills. And as somebody in Western Canada, the dominant way of making money was working in the oil and gas sector. So I got a job working for a local well stimulation company called Trican, and worked in that fracking and acidizing downhole stimulation side of things, and learned quite a bit about reservoir dynamics and just general operation in the field for oil and gas.
Mhm.
Did that for a few years and then moved into a company that did production chemicals, doing demulsifiers, water clarifiers, that type of thing for oil and gas separation. In Western Canada, but worked all over the globe with that. Some work in the Middle East, some work in Europe, some in the USA, and kind of got a lot of experience with that and learned a lot about how the production process works for oil and gas. Kind of moved from that field side of things where you're in the mud and on the drilling rigs and kind of doing all of that, and moved into the facilities and kind of learned how the fluids progress through the systems and how they're looked on there. Got a lot of exposure to P&IDs and engineering drawings and kind of understanding the flows and things that happen in a facility. Was there for quite a few years and then moved into this company, running their on-site laboratories. So it was a bit of a bridge between the lab side of things and that field plant side of things, running their on-site labs in a lot of those production facilities, understanding that production side of things, but also having that science background, kind of being able to marry those together. And then in the last couple of years, moved into this role where I'm leading what we call our upstream and on-site lab division for Bureau Veritas.
Very good. Well, along that journey, I wonder what skills or expertise that you acquired that's been instrumental to your success.
Yeah, like I mentioned, I worked in that drilling kind of well stimulation side of things, and really learned about getting your hands dirty and the value of being very involved early on in the process, and
Mhm.
understanding um, the hard work that goes into the products that we're working on, we're testing. Um, we also, moving into that production side of things and the facility side, I think sometimes there's a bit of a simplification in people's minds and the general public on what goes on in the oil and gas industry.
Mhm.
When you get involved in those plants and you see the deep level of detail and the engineering that goes into it, and the process improvements that are continually happening there, you really get a really a much better understanding of
Mhm.
what goes on in those facilities. And then as I marry that into what we're doing now, which is the analytical work associated with that production of oil and gas, um, you really start to understand the value of what the data that we're producing and how that impacts the operation of those facilities. And I think that
Right.
the integration of those really is valuable for people in this type of role.
Okay, fantastic. So you think that that sort of technical behind the scenes in the industry part has helped you significantly on the analytics side, really?
For sure, and I think it also gives you a bit more credibility when you go in and talk with some clients too, because
Sure.
you've had the coveralls on, you've swung the sledgehammers and put together the hammer unions on the um, fracking jobs, and you kind of have an understanding of that and some reservoir stuff. So you get a little bit of everything rather than just being just a lab guy that knows the lab really
Right.
really well.
Yeah.
I make no bones about it. I'm not. If you I could point out a GC, but I'm not the guy that's going to run the
Sure.
GC for you. But I have the
Yeah.
ideas on where that data goes and why it matters. So
Got you. Very good. Well, I know you've touched on it, briefly in your answers now, but I wonder, just digging into a bit more detail, what are the main product lines or categories that your company specializes in, Bureau Veritas?
Sure. So Bureau Veritas, is, I think most people across the globe know, is in a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
And I won't go through all of their product lines, but everything from consumer products, the marine, the infrastructure, and of course, I'm in the oil and gas industry. So we're in a vertical called fuels. We handle everything related to petroleum, coal, that type of fuel production and trade.
Hmm.
The majority of, at least in my experience, a lot of the work in the TIC space is in the trade side of thing, the commodity trade
Right.
side of things. So a ship of oil is either loading or discharging at different
Hmm.
ports and things. The area that I'm in is a little different from that within BV. We do the upstream oil and gas testing, as I mentioned. So everything from the wellhead all the way through to the refinery, and maybe a little bit beyond the refinery. We do a lot of work on any of those products in that value stream. So a lot of oil and gas testing throughout that. The value that we bring is really in providing that data that allows the producer to optimize their production, to hit any sort of regulatory requirements, and to make sure that whatever they're producing, they're getting the best value for the money on the other end where they're selling it. So it's similar in a way to the trade side of things, because you are actually you're giving them the testing data that they can use to value their product.
Right.
Difference is that we're not working necessarily between two different companies that are agreeing on a price. It's the
Okay.
same company. They're just using it to kind of optimize their production flow to get through to
Mhm.
the end.
Okay, very good. And your role in that business then? So you're leading a region?
Yeah, so I'm the vice president and chief operating officer for what we call our upstream and on-site labs. I
Okay.
oversee that globally. So predominantly here in North America is where the majority of that upstream has been focused. So the company that I'm with, and I joined a company called Maxim, and then it was bought by BV about 3 months later. So Maxim had this presence in the on-site space as well as in the upstream space. BV acquired it, and so we're kind of unique within the BV world, especially within fuels. There are some other regions that have on-site labs as well, but they're maybe a little more focused on coal or refineries. Maybe they're not as focused on the production side of things. So I oversee that upstream part of the business and the on-site labs globally.
Okay, fantastic. I mean, thinking broadly then, what do you think some of the key challenges or obstacles faced by tech companies are?
Yeah. So, the buzzword these days is AI, and what can AI do for you?
Right.
The I think the challenge for the TIC industry is AI and automation, and how to utilize that within your space, right?
Hmm.
Um, Given the level of detail that's required in the data you generate, as well as the importance of it, there's a bit of a reluctance to just rely wholeheartedly on AI to generate your data and to run your systems. That said, I think the flip side of that is the amount of data that we generate and the trending and the knowledge that could be gained from looking at that through an AI generated system would be very
Hmm.
valuable
Hmm.
for us and for our clients. I also think the automation side of things is something that we're still working through. There's an opportunity, I think, for tech companies to automate a lot of our
Yeah.
processes. But with that automation, what we see online metering, for example, or different analytical instruments that are online or inline, they'll be called.
Hmm.
Sometimes the challenge is that they're calibrated to a specific set of criteria and types of fluid and types of flow, et cetera.
Okay.
When you change those matrices, then your calibration gets out of whack, right?
Right.
And an instrument or an AI system or a computer may not know or may not be programmed at this point to understand all of those variables, whereas an individual can write it down and say, okay, our pressure changed from this to that, or
Hmm.
our
Hmm.
temperature or operating conditions upstream changed significantly, and so that's maybe why we're getting something a little bit odd here. A computer just runs whatever you tell it to run, and I think right now we're still not robust enough on some of those things. So as we see these online analyzers moving in to the space, there's a lot of opportunity to do the calibration and the maintenance of them. So I'm actually reminded of I don't know if you remember Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, where the
Yeah. Yeah.
dad was working and putting the caps on the toothpaste,
Yeah.
and then he loses his job, and then he gets hired back to fix the robot that puts the caps on the toothpaste. And so I feel a little bit like some of these online analyzers and some of that part of the industry is shifting that way. And so we're maybe not doing the analytical work itself, or we're moving towards a time where we won't be doing the actual analytical work, but we'll be doing the calibrations on the instruments that are doing the analytical work.
Yeah, I think talent's a buzzword, isn't it, in the world of AI, and how it's going to optimize and support, but also potentially replace. And what does that look like? And I think you've just balanced that by saying, there's a human part to it. There's a complete necessity, but ultimately we're trying to find ways to use it to, deal with big tasks, number tasks, graph tasks, those sorts of things.
Mhm. Yeah, I think right now a lot of what I see AI doing well is the administrative side of things,
Yeah.
and kind of the routine that it can just rock through in a very set uh, line of thinking, or a line of rules that it follows. When you get out into the field and into the real world, there's obviously a lot of deviations from those set rules. Things change, and that's where the human element will really play a role.
Yeah, agreed. Can you talk through any recent examples of innovative projects or breakthroughs that your company's been involved with?
Sure. We're doing one right now here in Edmonton. As far as I know, it's the first of its kind here in Canada, as a commercial hydrogen lab. So as we move into the hydrogen space across the globe for green energy, there's an increased demand to do the testing on the product itself and make sure that it's hitting certain criteria for usage as a fuel source. So we're working with a few different partners, equipment partners, to develop that capability within our facility, but also to develop some of the methods are still pretty rudimentary, or they need to be kind of expanded on and grown, and maybe the methods on certain pieces of instrument. Right now maybe it's one specialty instrument, but can we do that type of work on something that's a little more general, and make it a little more accessible to the rest of the industry? So that's something that's caught our eye, and we think that there's an opportunity here within the fuel space.
Nice, and that aligns with the Leap 28 strategy, I'd imagine.
Of course, yeah, yeah. So for those familiar with the BV Leap 28, we're certainly looking to move more into that renewable energy source, and sustainable aviation fuels and hydrogen and all of those types of things. So
Very good. So I guess on your side then, you've got a busy life with your career. How do you prioritize self-care and maintain a healthy work-life balance?
yeah, it's been challenging over the last few years. With since since COVID. When COVID happened, everybody was working from home and remote, and it was certainly stressful in its own way. But in a way, it was almost freeing, because you could just kind of do your thing at home. Um,
Yeah.
the last few years since, as we're trying to get back, the economy's growing and everything's moving and hustling along, we're being taxed more and more to do more and more. So for me, I try to put some time in my calendar to do things that I find relaxing and enjoy. You see, there's a picture of a fisher behind me. I'm a big fisherman, so that's from a recent trip to Panama with my son. We went fishing in Panama, and going out and doing that kind of thing. I love being in the outdoors. And so just setting aside some time in my calendar to, whether it's going for a walk around my neighborhood, or going away somewhere and experiencing some outdoors, and just kind of turning everything off and kind of clearing my head a little bit, gives me that refresh to come back. Another part of it for me is also giving back to people in need in communities. So I've been part of an organization that builds houses in Central America for the last 13 years, and been on the board for them for 6 years. Just stepped off the board last year. But they build 700-800 houses a year down there, and I'm actually flying out on Saturday to go down there for another week to build again. So it gives perspective to life, in my view, being able to go do that type of thing, and being able to have a different perspective for those that are disadvantaged in other countries and in developing nations, and feel like you can help out there, and maybe your problems at home don't seem quite so big anymore.
No, I appreciate the insight. That's amazing. Thanks for sharing. I guess as a closing question, if you could look back in time and give advice to your 21-year-old self, what would that be?
So I have a 21-year-old son, and I try and give him advice all the time. He doesn't necessarily listen to my advice,
Oh,
but no, he does a lot. But I think the biggest thing that I came out of school as a 21-year-old, and I thought I knew what I could do, but it was trying to convey to those around me what my capabilities were.
okay.
And for me, it was learning to say yes to opportunities, and not being afraid of can I do it or not do it.
Mhm.
Jumping in with both feet and going after things allowed me to have opportunities that I probably wouldn't have had otherwise. In many stages of our careers, we look at the next role, and if it's something that you think, hey, I could do that, that's a slam dunk, you're probably going to be successful at it for a period of time, and then you might get bored with it. That's
Mhm.
for me anyway. If it's something that scares you a little bit to jump into it, and you're a little bit hesitant to, I think that's a good place to go. It pushes you and pushes your boundaries, and causes you to grow, and it also reveals to you what you're capable of. And I think that sets you up for success in the future.
Yeah, you can never have all the answers to the equation. There's always going to be an element of a leap of faith, but you've got to trust in your character
Yep,
and understand that you only know what you know and you don't know what you don't. And the only way to learn what you don't know is by trying stuff that you don't know. Um, I said this to the team the other day as well. I think exactly the same thing. If your goals aren't intimidating and scaring you, they're probably not big enough,
that's right.
realistically. And
Yeah,
but it's trying to also manage the expectation with reality. Like you want
right.
realistic
Yeah,
goals as well, right?
yeah. That the flip side of that is, as I said, I always knew what I could or couldn't do, or felt like I did, at least when I was young. And it was showing people what I could or couldn't do. I think sometimes when you're young, you can kind of get a little frustrated with having to prove yourself a little bit. Um,
Mhm.
there were lots of stages there where I've got a raincoat on because I'm doing an acid job on a well, and it's ankle deep in mud, and I've got a degree that I thought was going to open up doors for me, and I'm working
Yeah.
on rigs, right? Um, but looking at that as a learning opportunity and giving me the opportunity to realize, hey, these guys are hard workers. These guys know what they're doing. There's highly technical knowledge here in this space,
Mhm.
whether they went to, got PhDs or masters or bachelor's degrees or not. They know something that I can learn from. Picking up that knowledge and using that to accelerate your career is really helpful too.
I think that's so important at an early stage as well. I think you should be taking opportunities down the lens of skills development over anything else until a certain period in time. You can look at comp as maybe a main driver at a certain point, but definitely for those first 10 years, it's all about what skills can I take and what can I learn.
Yeah, for sure.
Very good. An amazing podcast. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Thomas.
No worries. And we'll catch you all next on the Tales of TIC. Thanks again.
Bye bye.